Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back for a week of live shows right here on the Kev Baker Show on Truth Frequency Radio. How you all doing out there? I think we've been joined by tonight's special guest. I'm not too sure. I might just have to restart the call here. It looks like it's all gone horribly wrong. Bear with me 2 minutes, folks. I'm just going to restart the call, okay? So we've got Scott coming on, as you can see there. But I think we've got some serious issues with the Skype going on. 2 seconds. Let me see. How do we get Skype to quit when it's doing this? We go in here. So if you're joining us over on... Here we go, hang on. Skype, end task. Yeah, if you're joining us on YouTube right now, how you all doing? Give me just 2 moments till I reconnect with the studio. We'll get Scott back on. And we will be good to go, everyone. We'll be good to go. So let's see here. By magic. There we go. We are back. We are live. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. A little bit of a glitch here at my end. Let me try and add in my very special guest and my good friend, Mr. Scotty Lopez, and we will be good to go. So how you all doing out there? Had a great stream today. I hope you were all over there watching that. If not, you can catch it on the YouTube channel. I definitely think it's worth going back, taking a look at. There's the man himself, Scotty Lopez. He's here with me. Try and fix your camera now, Scott. How you doing, Scotty boy?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Kev. Just a lot of stuff going on in the world, and you know, I know we do the weekend streams and we try to keep it, you know, light and fun and all that stuff. So I didn't want to bring any of that up during the weekend, but you know, there's just been something that's been eating at me, and you know, I think we have to at least address it today because, you know, I mean, looks like we're going to have to be getting into that mode where we're going to have to be trying to try and stop another war. So, yeah, I've been sort of worrying about this because it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
Not good at all. Now, we're going to be joined by Joe Joseph during the first break. He's going to be coming on to talk about things. But what Scott's talking about here, of course, is big news. And from time to time, you know, I do have to take a step back from the woo that I like getting into. I love having a laugh, love having a joke. But when I first started out, you know, I used to cover all the geopolitical stuff, look at what's going on in the world, look at how the world works. And one of the things that you come to realize over time that is war is something that governments and elites use from time to time when, for a various number of reasons. And the geopolitical chessboard right now, if you want to look at it like that, is like a tinderbox, especially when you go over to the Middle East. Well, I've got a series of headlines here that I want to show you all, and that'll kind of set us up for the discussion in the first part of the show. But don't panic, we've also got Woo to come as well. We've got the Chernobyl Mothman to take a look at. Yes, indeed, Scott.
Ooh.
Exactly. Not very often you get to talk about the Mothman of Chernobyl, right?
No, I'm
only on the
liking
Kev
that.
Baker show.
Yes, that only Kev Baker can we take the Mothman and take it to the next level, because, you know, look out, normal Mothman, because your radioactive brother is far more interesting, it sounds like.
Absolutely. So what's been happening in the world that's forced me and Scott to put our serious hats on for a change? Well, we have had fires engulfing Saudi Arabia's oil facilities after drone attacks. Now, these were drone attacks carried out on some of the major oil refining facilities within Saudi Arabia. At first, obviously, we've had a lot of accusations back and forth, as we're about to find out in a minute. Today, we had the BBC coming out. If I scroll back up here, I was having a read of this before we came on. Saudi oil attacks. The US says that intelligence shows that Iran is involved. Now, that's very serious, folks, because you're literally talking about one nation striking another sovereign nation, and Saudi Arabia very much in bed with America and the UK and Israel. So this is something that's really serious, whether it's all orchestrated, whether we're being programmed by the media or not. You can see that they're definitely setting something up here. So we come across to the Wall Street Journal. We've had Iran. They've countered all of this by rejecting the US accusations over the Saudi oil facility attacks. And no evidence to date, not that I've come across anyway, no evidence by any side in this as to who actually carried this out. So while all this is going on, we've had more stuff going on in the tanker wars. Or shall we call it tanker gate? Everything's a gate these days, right? So Iran have seized another tanker in the Straits of Hormuz for, quote, smuggling fuel amid escalating tensions over drone strike on Saudi Arabian oil plant. Over to the next story, the next headline I've got queued up for this, if it loads up here. And of course, it's one of these stupid pages. Oil to hit $100. Pompeo blasts Iran for unprecedented drone attack that crippled largest Saudi oil processing facility. Now, I bring this up because when it comes to the oil price and the oil market, this plays a very, very, very significant part in any decision to go to war. Sounds a bit weird, I know, but this kind of thing drives political decisions. And then, just before we came to air today, I thought we'll take a little look at what the kind of mainstream are saying about things. Now, I'm not going to play this here now, but this brings up something that I want to talk to Scott about anyway. And the headline reads, the White House would like you to abandon all common sense on locked and loaded. See, that's another reason this is a very serious story, in my opinion, Scott. The fact that you've got this kind of attitude, this statement from Trump about being locked and loaded. Sounds to me like we're getting ready for something happening in the Middle East. But what's your take on it all, dude? You've been watching it closer than I have.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like anytime you see something involving oil, resources, you really need to start paying attention, because that's how conflicts kick off extremely quickly. I mean, this could escalate like literally overnight. Like, we could be waking up one morning and hear that Saudi Arabia has went to war with Iran. And obviously, with the entangling alliances we have ourselves in right now, that could kick off a much larger global conflict, because everybody's going to be dragged into that. I really don't like this whole escalation of things going on between the United States and Iran. A lot of this stuff happening in the shipping lanes, these oil tankers being seized, and now this drone attack on the largest oil facility in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's kind of like the equivalent of, say, a country bombing our oil production facilities around Houston, Texas, right? I mean, that's literally kind of what happened to Saudi Arabia. I mean, at one point it cut their oil production to, in half, and that was 5% of the global oil market. I mean, this is not a small incident. This is not a little thing that happened. And I think everybody's just kind of sitting around right now figuring out, what are we going to do? Because I don't think they're just going to let that slide. I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to let that slide. And, I'm not a fan of Saudi Arabia by no means. And I'm definitely not a fan of us being allies with them or anything like that. I mean, I personally just think that, we need to have complete, energy independence and not even depend on them for this exact reason right here that we're talking about. Because the us being tied to them means that we're going to be drug into any conflict that occurs down there. And we know the historical, that Saudi Arabia and Iran absolutely hate each other because it's a sectarian hatred, right? It's a sectarian hatred of Shiites and Sunnis, right? Wahhabis versus the Shiites, and it's just it's a much deeper thing going on there that we really have no business being involved in, but it doesn't look good. And I think, I don't know, I just have this bad feeling that we're going to be drug into some at least regional conflict down there. And a lot of the kind of the analysis and stuff that I've been reading about the situation suggests that, I mean, there's just this conflict that, or this something is bubbling to the surface over there, and it's not going to take much. And it's going to be far beyond like your average sort of terror group trying to establish dominance in a power vacuum situation. We're talking about countries actually going to war with each other, and Iran is not some backwoods mud hut country with a 2-bit dictator running it. Iran is a technologically advanced nation. So I mean, it's an entirely different ball game when you're talking about that kind of a conflict. I mean, they have modern cities with skyscrapers and stuff like that, right? Like I said, it's not like we're fighting some third world nation, with mud huts and caves. It's not how it is. And obviously Saudi Arabia is a extremely rich modern nation. I mean, look, they're planning on building, what's the name of that city? Zion, right? So a conflict like that kicking off, I mean, that's just going to be insane. And for us to be drug into something like that is going to be absolutely, it's going to be a horrific sort of war if that occurs. And, who decides they're all going to get involved? I mean, you have Russia backing Iran. We back Saudi Arabia. Is Israel going to get involved? Decide that they're going to jump into it too, since we're jumping in on our. I mean, this is a very serious thing we're looking at here, and you have Trump on one hand saying he doesn't want a war, but then you get kind of the double speak, and he's saying he's locked and loaded, and like these mixed sort of messages. And I've always said that they're going to try to drag us into war, man. I mean, they surrounded Trump with neocons. He fired Bolton, which was I'm happy he did that. But I find it very interesting and kind of like coincidental that, what is it, not even a week after he fires Bolton, we have this drone attack in Saudi Arabia. Kind of makes me wonder if Bolton picked up the phone, called a few people, and was like, yeah, get something going here, because Bolton is like a McCain sort of individual. I mean, Bolton's a bad dude, and he's part of the whole PNAC, Project for a New American Century. And for those of you who don't know what that is the white paper that was, rebuilding America's defenses that the Rand Corporation put out not too long before 9/11. And they said that in order to rebuild America's defenses, maybe we needed a catalyzing event, a Pearl Harbor like catalyzing event. And what happened not too long later? the event that changed everything. So, yeah, I mean, Bolton's part of that crew, that group, that Bush administration neocon group that, that was part of all of that. So, you know, obviously Bolton was trying to drag us into war. I mean, we could all see that. It was Iran this, Iran that. He's been all about going after Iran from the very get-go. And maybe Trump said, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get us into a war, and decided he was going to, fire him.
Come on, Scott,
we
cheer
still
up,
have
man. Cheer up. The white hats are going to save us, dude. The white hats are they're gonna ride in. They're gonna save us. They're gonna stop this deep state move in the desert, dude. We're all gonna be singing Kumbaya by the end of the week, right? Come on, you triggered my white hats music. Come on, dude. No, I see where you're coming from here, Scott, and this is serious. Yeah. It's serious stuff, and we're going back to this whole locked and loaded thing. And this is the tweet here that I'm referring to. It says Saudi Arabia oil supply was attacked. There is reason to believe we know the culprit. Are locked and loaded depending on verification. So they knew the culprit like moments after this thing was happening. Oh, how convenient. It's almost as if that they were ready to blame somebody for this, right? But are waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of this attack. So whoever Saudi Arabia want us to go after, we'll just wait for them to tell us. Sometimes wonder whose hand is up the other one's hoo-ha. You've usually got like a hand puppet and one's controlling somebody. But I think both of these nations right now, and Israel, they've all got hands up each other's hoo-has. And they're all controlling each other, Scott. And do we know who actually launched this drone attack? Well, we don't. And over in that region, it's an absolute quagmire. It really is. There's proxy wars going on already between Iran and Saudi Arabia in Yemen. And the Iranians, I don't think they make any bones about the fact that they supply the Houthi rebels that fight within Yemen. They also supply Hezbollah as well. And of course, don't forget, the Islamic State, whatever they've rebranded themselves to this month, they are basically the proxy army of the globalists. They're a tool of destabilization and an excuse to invade these countries in the Middle East. So it's already a quagmire. We can see how this place is a total tinderbox, Scott. And really, in the end of the day, it's not going to matter who launched this drone attack, because the event itself has now got the potential to start something bigger. And with people like Russia involved, like Scott was saying, with superpowers getting involved, in Israel, they sit there, it's almost like they're not getting involved, but that their tentacles are all over this as well, folks. Absolutely. And I'm not taking blame away from the Iranians, because I don't know. No, I just don't know, Scott. And when you look at the map, we can bring up the map in a minute, it actually makes more sense to be flying drones from Iran to Saudi Arabia than it does all the way up from Yemen. Over 1,000 miles, I think it was, if these Yemeni rebels were the ones that were flying them, Scott. So, I mean, look, maybe Iran's ready to go for it. Maybe this crazy regime they've got over there see Trump as, maybe they see him as weak. Maybe they see him as an opportunity. Or maybe, just maybe, all of them are in this together. You just never bloody know, Scott.
I genuinely think that the hatred between, Saudi Arabia and Iran is real. I mean, when you're talking about sectarian factions like that, religious.
Yeah, but when you get to the center of like the power further up, the ones that are pulling the strings and stoking the hate between the Shias and the Sunnis and everything else. In the end of the day, there's a lot of them are just globalists, and they use that division. At the end of the day,
but Scott. I mean, but really, I mean, is the leadership of Iran, the upper echelon leadership of Iran, are they globalists?
Well, what do we know about them?
I don't think so.
What do we know about them, though? Because all we've ever been told comes from the West.
Do they have an IMF?
They're one of the few that don't.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, I don't think that they're part of the club. I don't think that they're you know, I don't think that there's some secret back channel of elite
Well,
Saudis and
there was
Iranians that
certainly
are
something going
working
on when
together.
Obama was handing them like billions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, there is that aspect, but dude, you're right. I mean, we really don't know, and it's so. I bet the stuff going on behind the scenes is probably even crazier than we can imagine.
That's what I'm
You know what I
talking
mean?
about, dude. At a certain level, but these cats, we don't have a clue what's going on. You've got Obama giving them money in one hand. You've got Trump coming in, the biggest enemy. They're meant to be the boogeyman along with North Korea. Yet, at a certain level, are they really?
Who knows? I mean, who knows? But who ends up suffering in the end? The the people, right?
Exactly.
The the just the your average person, who happens to live in Iran, is going to end up facing the wrath of all of this stuff. And if a conflict kicks out or kicks off, it's going to be innocent people that die, and I try to stay positive and I try to, but this is the shit that, it starts getting spooky when it pops up. And I got I got into activism and doing what we do because of the Iraq war. For a lot of people it was 9/11 that was kind of like the catalyzing thing for them. And 9/11 actually came later for me. I initially got into this for being vocal against the Iraq war. I didn't want to be there. I was what you would consider a mainline conservative Republican or whatever neocon, and I had that kind of leaning, right? And so when 9/11 happened, I was unfortunately gung ho to go into you know kick the shit out of everybody who may have been involved, right? And but once we got into the Iraq war, I was like, wait a minute, what does Iraq have to do with Afghanistan? Because I had no problem going into Afghanistan. But when we went into Iraq, I was like, why? What's the point? What are they doing?
See, I
And
had
then we
issues
find,
with Afghanistan when allegedly most of those, I say allegedly, most of the characters from the official narrative of that day back in September, they were Saudi Arabian. And here we were. Wow. But why aren't we going in
yeah,
there? I wonder why, eh?
yeah, but see, you got to remember, at the time, I kind of fell into the propaganda. Well, I did fall into the propaganda with that. So you got to remember, I wasn't really awake at the time, right? And 9/11 had that uh, effect on me that it had on a lot of people, where you just you wanted to somebody had to pay the price for it, right? Um, and it was in my opposition to the Iraq War and my anti-war sort of activism that people told me, hey, you need to kind of go back and look at all of this stuff with 9/11. And I ended up going back. A lot of people, like I said, a lot of people, 9/11 was the first thing, and that was the first thing that they looked at, and it wasn't the case with me. I actually went back and looked at 9/11, and then I was like, oh, it all made a lot more sense. And I'm like, wow, but, you know, I'm just afraid we're going to be drug into another conflict. And I don't want that. This is serious stuff. We're talking about a lot of people who are going to die. I don't want to see people dead. I don't want to see people die. I don't want to see our troops getting sent into another endless war that's never going to end. We're still in Afghanistan. And what we're gonna sit here and
Hold that thought, Scotty boy. Hold that thought, because we are tight on the break. We'll be back after these short messages. Don't go anywhere. There we go. And for some reason, I can't resize your camera, Scott. Skype's just playing. Oh, it's playing funny. It's playing good now. It's playing nice, dude. It's playing nice. Yes, indeed. So we're still on YouTube, obviously. We haven't forgotten all of you out there. Would we forget all of you? But yeah, folks, what's happening over there? Everyone's going to have their take. Is it something out of nothing? The way the media are acting, it's certainly not something out of nothing. They seem to be going into pre-Iraq style mode. That they've got all the kind of graphics, they've got all the kind of armaments that's in the area, and that they're programming people. It's what they do. And this is when you see that whole kind of brainwashing, Scott, that operation taking place. And when you see the media going into full swing like this, that's when you get the red flag to say there's something going on here.
When people need to start worrying whenever you see Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, when you see the quote unquote the left and the right media all of a sudden on the same page about going to war, then it's going to happen. It's really close. So people need to start paying attention to that. If you can flip it from Fox News to CNN, and they're both up there with the regional maps, and they're all on the same page with the same talking points about Iran, that's your sign that we're about to go in and do something. So because remember, they were all gung-ho about it in Iraq, right? It didn't matter what channel you flipped it on. We had to get Saddam out of there. He was such a bad guy. And Saddam was a bad dude. He's a dictator, right? But he was a stabilizing force in the region. That culture, you have to rule through power.
No, I don't get it. I don't get it, Scott. I don't see Iran going and surrounding countries with air bases. I don't see Iran really causing our way of life over here in the West. I don't think they've really done anything to really cause me or yourself or many other people to want to go to war with them, to be honest with you,
Yeah, how dare them, put their country around our ring of air bases that we have.
I know, it's just ridiculous, right? Those pesky Iranians. This is the way that the world works, folks. And somebody says in the chat room, Saddam held it together. The way the Middle Eastern, the Arab people are, Middle East, that's the way they're used to. They're used to kind of a patriarchy, where they've got that almost dictator figure. That's what they're used to. Look at Gaddafi. A lot of these countries, and rightly or wrongly, but you're right, look at Iraq ever since they got rid of Saddam. Not saying he was a good guy. Look at Libya when they toppled Gaddafi. You see how it all goes to hell in a handbasket? And the same people that are funding these groups within these countries that start these conflicts, they're the same ones that come in to build it up after we've bombed them back to the Middle Ages. War's a racket. It's an absolute racket, folks. So yeah, we're getting ready to come back now. Here we go, Scotty boy. Back to the mothership.
Back to the mothership.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you like a haggis out of hell with all the top news. Do you like that one, Scott? You like that? Coast to coast, I've got like Scirocco's out of the desert and cool stuff like that. I was thinking, what can I have? What can I be? I can be the haggis out of hell, delivering you news and woo from here and beyond. Beyond this dimension. Not many shows can promise that stuff, Scott, all going on.
No, not many shows can promise that.
Now, Scott,
but only KBS can.
Exactly. Now, I need to ask you, dude, because what's been going on in recent times, right? We've got John Bolton. You mentioned him in the first part of the show. This guy's like the Lord of War. You know, he's like some kind of crazy dude. He should be on like some island stroking a cat somewhere, getting ready to launch like mass Armageddon. But I think I don't know. I don't know.
Probably is
well,
right now.
Well, dude, I don't know if this is
sitting
connected, right? I don't know if this is connected or not. But round about the same time that we had Bolton getting kicked out of there, we also had this story slipping up or coming up in the news cycle. And not many people have really made a thing about this. So it says Osama bin Laden's son killed in a US counter-terrorism operation, Trump says. Now it says here this story's the 14th. I believe, Scott, that's the same day that we had this attack on the Saudi Arabian oil facilities, right? So it says here, President Trump says that Hamza bin Laden, we're going to add in Joe Joseph to the proceedings, I think. Hang on. He calls and then he hangs up, Scott. See how he does that? He's just trying to be dramatic, you know. He's been all dramatic about it. Here he is, there's Joe. So, like I was saying, President Trump says that Hamza bin Laden, the son of Osama bin Laden, has been killed in a US counter-terrorism operation in Afghanistan, Pakistan region. Yes, there he is. In a statement released by the White House on Saturday, Trump said bin Laden's son was responsible for planning and dealing with various terrorist groups. What you mean, like the CIA? Like his dad worked for that terrorist group? Just saying. His death, he said, quote, not only deprives Al-Qaeda of important leadership skills and the symbolic connection to his father, but undermines important operational activities of the group. Now, this is the kind of thing you'd have expected to see when Bolton was in office, right?
I thought that happened months ago, though.
Well, maybe it did, Joe, but they've regurgitated it over the weekend.
They did. They killed him months ago.
Maybe it's like his dad.
They recycled it.
Yeah, well, maybe it's like his dad. Maybe there's like 4 or 5 of them. They'll like have a fat CNN one.
What ends up happening is that, it'll get reported by Sputnik, and then they can't touch it for a while because Sputnik touched it.
Sputnik's cool, man.
I love Sputnik, but that they're what do you call them?
Then they're pesky Russians.
The hometown news, Kev, is that what it is?
Yeah, they're my local news. Shut it, Joe. I might just have to take you out in a KGB death hold. But Joe, first part of the show, I want to get your take on this, having been in the US military. What's going on with Saudi Arabia, dude?
It's a long story.
That's okay. That's okay. We've got plenty of time. That's okay.
So this is kind of my whole thing with this. There has to be more to this story. And I don't know necessarily if Iran has a direct role to play. They probably have a little role to play, but because they're not known for being they don't play nice. And they don't play nice because other factions in that area don't play nice. But when Saddam Hussein was there, at least there was balance of power in the region. And since Saddam Hussein was taken out, that void was filled by us. And then over time, we've built up Iraq again, but they're not near what they used to be when old Saddam was running the game over in Iraq. So the United States has then decided to go and build up Saudi Arabia, who have amassed a pretty good size army now and have some pretty good hardware for, regional warfare. So it's not a surprise that Saudi Arabia would be taunted by proxies or whoever did this. It's just not a surprise to me that their infrastructure would be attacked, no different than ours would be attacked if they came over here. It's the same thing. You often hear, well, terrorists will often profile what? They profile utilities. They profile, these high-profile buildings, landmarks, you name it, anything of value anything that has psychological impact, or even more, has an economic impact, or even affects you personally. That's the best one. The best one is that not only has an economic impact, but affects you personally. Something along the lines of, could you imagine if like the internet went down for 48 hours?
Oof.
I mean, people would be losing their ever-loving minds.
And I was telling Kev, you know, to put this into perspective, what happened to Saudi Arabia? You know, that was their largest oil production facility, and you know, at one point it cut their oil production in half, and that was what, 5% of the global market. Well, you know, I mean,
they have a lot of redundancy built in, so it's not.
They do, but they do, but symbolically, and like you said, you know, symbolically, and you know, that would be, you know, that's like Saudi Arabia's version to put this in perspective, it would be like if somebody bought, it would be like some, well, yeah, or it'd be like if somebody decided that they were going to blow up our oil production facilities in, you know, around Houston or something.
Right. Yeah, that would be pretty damn big, you know, as far as our oil production is concerned, because a lot of the pipelines run through Houston and up to the coast.
And do you think that if something like that happened to the U.S. that we're just going to sit there and let that happen? I don't think Saudi Arabia is just going to sit there and let this slide at all.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's probably a want to do that, but Iran's no joke. You know,
I know they're no joke.
They took the toe with Saddam for like 10 years. You know, they know what to do.
That's the scary part about this, is that they're no joke.
They're Russia and China's proxy.
Yeah, so I think you'll probably see Saudi take it out on the people in Yemen.
But you can't, because see, once you start that, then
Joe, they've been doing it every day for like.
I know, but once you start this, right? Once Saudi Arabia attacks Iran, like Saudi Arabia physically attacks Iran, and it sparks a regional conflict, then we're feeding the Saudis, and so is the West. And then the East is feeding Iran, or, you know, the Russia-China ooga boogas, and all of those bad, evil commies, right? All of those guys, they're going to be feeding Iran. So it's no different than any other conflict. It's just whose proxies is whose. It's the same thing as what was going on in Syria, only it's a little bit larger scale. And it's scary, to be quite honest with you. Not so much for the United States. It shocks the markets, but in terms of supply, the United States could make up for that lost supply. And quite frankly, we could be energy independent if we truly wanted to be. So I don't think that it's a problem there. The problem is that everything's built on speculation now, and there was no buffer built into the value of a barrel of oil for this type of thing. And that's why you saw a 20% jump in the price in less than 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then it scaled back to 10%. But they now with that 10%, they say, well, we've priced in something like that, which, okay, whatever. I hate that crap. See, if it was me, I'd be like, okay, yeah, U.S., we're rocking it. We can make our own oil. We're good. We don't need the rest of the world. For you, ma'am, it's $1.25. Now, that would be nice. But I don't think we'll ever see that kind of cheap gasoline anymore.
So we're all good to go then. Nothing to worry about. We're good.
I tell you what, dude, if it sparks off anything, that's serious.
No, I know. You know me. I laugh and I joke in the face of such serious. The more serious the topic, the more inappropriate my laughter, I find.
Well, here's another serious thing. This is even more serious than that, I think. Trump has thrown out there a mutual defense treaty with Israel. Now, we don't have a mutual defense treaty with Israel. Now, we may be like allies and, you know, buddy and all. But if we're treaty bound to respond if they're attacked, that's bad juju, man. Bad juju.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, I mean, we're in this mode where we have these entangling alliances, and like Joe said, if we have some kind of a defense treaty or something going on, because let's be honest, if something does kick off over there, right, and say Saudi Arabia and Iran get into it, what Iran is going to do. They're going to attack Israel.
Oh yeah.
That's just what they're going to do. And so immediately just that in itself is going to drag us in if we're not already, involved trying to, quote unquote, defend Saudi Arabia.
Like, Scott, what this all plays into, right? And I don't mean to take it woo, but woo is attached to this because we're in the apocalypse, right? We're in this change of the age, Scotty. And this is what happens historically, right? Nations, they go to war, and those wars are what brings about the change. It's a horrible thing to say, the people, the innocent lives that are lost in things. But historically, this is what happens. Be it in the Middle East, be it, this is what happens when you get to this point where everything's coming out into the open. They're moving, they're going for broke to get their global system put in place. Big changes are afoot. Best thing to get global stuff done, Scotty, is have a conflict, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the stuff that, General Wesley Clark was talking about.
Yep.
And if you want to pull that up, or I can find it.
I've got it here, man.
It was the plan for 7 nations. This is a plan that they've been working on for a long time, and they've just been set back. Obviously, remember we tried to do the whole Syria thing, and even our own military was like, no, I'm not going to be.
And that, we also had Russia at that point as well, and I think Russia being in cahoots with Iran, that must be like putting an extra kind of obstacle in the way of this, because that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, they're just behind. There's a certain order that they want in the Middle East, and right now we're in this mode to where it's destabilization and chaos in order for them to come in and try to fill the void and establish that new order that they want. And we're just in that mode now where we're seeing the chaos, the destabilization, and all of that. And
well, I've got that speech here that you were talking about, and destabilization is a good way to really cue it up, because we're talking about taking out or toppling the regimes in 7 countries, and this is it's infamous. This speech,
very infamous.
Yeah, exactly. Some people might not have heard it, but I think this needs some kind of background music for this one. We'll get the New World Order on. Here we go.
Very nice.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail."
Shocking.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
There we go, folks. There we go.
Ouch.
Ouch.
A little more than 5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
more than 5 years.
if it hadn't been for Russia in Syria, you know, that Arab Spring, remember that got the ball rolling over there? We ended up in Libya, and it was still going strong, and that's when Russia said no more. And they got bogged down, and we're still kind of at that point. But yet they're going for broke now, you see? They're moving on anyway. They're just going to escalate that region.
And you got to remember, people, the same intel agencies and people that are, dead convinced that Iran, is behind this drone attack. You got to remember, these are the same people that told you that Saddam had WMDs, that there were mobile
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Biological weapon labs, and that there was yellow cake. Remember all that nice
yum
propaganda.
All
that
propaganda stuff. Yep. It's all lies. It's even today, InfoWars. Paul Joseph Watson. China warns Trump not to believe Warhawk conspiracy theories that Iran was behind attack on Saudi Arabia. So even China's like, yo, come on.
So what do you think, Joe? This is my sort of conspiratorial hat being put on. I think it's extremely convenient that this drone attack in Saudi Arabia happened just not even a week after Trump gave the boot to Bolton. And it's almost like...
I see where you're going with this.
It's almost like the Empire Strikes Back. The neocons strike back. And they're like, and they're like, you kicked our boy Bolton out? You're going to do that? Well, here, let us make a few phone calls, Saudi Arabia, and we'll get something going here so we can be like, see, we told you so.
They just turn on one of their mercenary group, contractors, and hey, I need you to blow something up for us. Okay.
You see, that's where I am, right? Because when you think about it, unless these mullahs and everything else in Iran have got like a suicidal death wish, the worst thing they could do right now is bomb a Saudi oil refinery, because they know they're going to bring the wrath of the world upon them. Who benefits? Always think, who benefits from this? And a lot of people in the region benefit, but it's not Iran. It's people like, Saudi Arabia. It's people like
Iran's not stupid.
Israel as well.
They have 10 years of Saddam warfare. They're not dumb.
No.
They're not dumb.
But at the same time, Joe, I'm not saying they didn't do it. The point is, we've not been shown evidence to prove anything.
We've not. It's all a bunch of hooey. And even if you see the evidence, do you know it's evidence?
Deep fake.
How can you even trust it these days?
You can't.
Yes, exactly. If you're being presented quote unquote evidence by the intel agencies, like I said, the same people that told you Saddam had yellow cake.
So we're in a real conundrum here.
Mm.
The world is.
Yep.
Because how do you trust anything you see or read? And what is that going to do? People are going to unplug because, they don't want to deal with this crap.
And it also makes other people run further towards the mainstream who are propagandizing and programming them. Because, unfortunately, it seems like it's common knowledge to us, folks, because we know what the mainstream media is all about. But the harsh reality is that the majority of people still go there. And they still believe that the mainstream media are totally unbiased, and all they're there to do is give them the news. And that's the people that the mainstream media need to convince. They just need to keep enough of them convinced enough of the time to have that perception formed where they can keep doing what they do. So it's when I see the media operation that's in full swing around this, the BBC, everyone else, guys, CNN, Fox, not looking good that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit of a conundrum, as Joe would say.
Yes, exactly. And, it was just like I was saying earlier, people need to start paying attention to where if you start seeing media on both sides of the political paradigm, all of a sudden on one single talking point, yeah, that means it's close, right? Like if you flip to CNN and you see Wolf Blitzer going, "Those dirty Iranians, how dare them," and they got the maps pulled up, and then you tune over to Fox and they got the maps pulled up and they're talking about Iran as well, then
It's when they bring Cronkite.
Ron Paul weighed in on this.
Oh, what's he saying, Joe?
Very interesting. He says, will Trump take the neocon bait and attack Iran over Saudi strike?
Yeah, see, there we go.
Says the recent attacks on Saudi oil facilities by Yemeni Houthi fighters demonstrates once again that an aggressive foreign policy often brings unintended consequences and can result in blowback. In 2015, Saudi Arabia attacked its neighbor Yemen because a coup in that country ousted the Saudi-backed dictator. 4 years later, Yemen is in ruins, with nearly 100,000 Yemenis killed and millions more facing death by starvation. It's been rightly called the worst humanitarian catastrophe on the planet. But rich and powerful Saudi Arabia did not defeat Yemen. In fact, the Saudis last month asked the Trump administration to help facilitate talks with the Houthis in hopes that the war, which has cost Saudi Arabia tens of billions of dollars, could finally end without Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman losing too much face. Washington admitted earlier this month that those talks had begun. The surprise Houthi attack on Saturday disrupted half of Saudi Arabia's oil and gas production and shocked Washington. Predictably, however, the neocons are using the attack to call for war with Iran. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the few people in Washington who make John Bolton look like a dove, tweeted today that it's now time for the U.S. to put on the table an attack on Iranian oil refineries. Graham is the perfect embodiment of the saying, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. No matter what the problem, for Graham, the solution is war. Likewise, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is supposed to represent U.S. diplomacy, jumped to blame Iran for the attack on Saudi Arabia, tweeting that, quote, Iran has now launched an unprecedented attack on the world's energy supply.
And did he not head up the CIA at one point?
At some point.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The same spook agencies that help orchestrate these things.
Oh, yeah, of course, he provided no evidence. Very nice.
Very nice.
Even as the Houthis themselves took responsibility for the bombing. What's remarkable is that all of Washington's warmongers are ready for war over what is actually a retaliatory strike by a country that is the victim of Saudi aggression, not the aggressor itself. Yemen did not attack Saudi Arabia in 2015. It was the other way around. If you start a war with another country and the other country fights back, you should not be entitled to complain about how unfair the whole thing is. The establishment reaction to the Yemeni oil field strike reminds me of a hearing in the House Foreign Affairs Committee just before the U.S. launched the 2003 Iraq War. As I was arguing against the authorization for that war, I pointed out that Iraq had never attacked the United States. One of my colleagues stopped me in mid-sentence saying, "Let me remind the gentleman that the Iraqis have been shooting at our planes for years." True, but those planes were bombing Iraq. The neocons want a U.S. war on Iran at any cost. They may feel temporarily at a disadvantage with the departure of their ally in the Trump administration, John Bolton. However, the sad truth is that there are plenty more John Boltons in the administration, and they have allies in the Lindsey Grahams in Congress.
Hashtag deep state.
Yeah, Yemen has demonstrated that it can fight back against Saudi aggression. The only sensible way forward is for a rapid end to this 4-year travesty, and the Saudis would be wise to wake up to the mess they've created for themselves. Whatever the case, U.S. participation in Saudi Arabia's war on Yemen must end immediately, and neocon lies about Iran's role in the war must be refuted and resisted. There you have it.
There you do have it. Look at that. Are we about to hear the dulcet tones of...
Follow my amigos, look to Operation Cyclone. Peace out.
Operation Cyclone. We will have a look at that by the end of the show. Yes. Thank you very much. But yeah, that was quite a good article, that. And it does feel like Trump's been put in a position, right? And the last thing, like I was saying to you, Scott, I would imagine the last thing he wants to do is get embroiled in some kind of war, but at the same time, doesn't want to look weak in the face of what's going on here. So we'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere.
I don't think he would.
2 seconds, though. 2 seconds, Joe. I want to give a big shout out to our new member, Andy Thomas. We had another new member today, Jason. We're 23 away from the next emoji. Not that I'm counting or anything. And just a guy. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Hey, I don't think we're going to be, I don't think it would be bad, personally, if he said, if I was him, I would cut bait. I'd just leave the region. I'd say, okay, Saudi Arabia, sorry, sir. This little friendship that we have, nope, no more. Israel, love you long time, no more. All of you people, have fun, no more. And then they go kapoom to Saudi Arabia or whatever. And so what? We've got the capacity.
Yeah, you know? If we have energy independence and we don't need to depend on them for oil, then
and we've got an ocean separating us from them, and an ocean. We got 2 oceans separating us.
I think this is where the Chittahoorie turn up.
We're good.
The Chittahoorie aren't going to take much more of this, boys.
We deal with the Chittahoorie when they get here.
It's okay. We'll let Popeye deal with them.
That's right. All it's got to do is just unleash the beard upon them.
Yes, the beard. Is it a beard anymore that Popeye has? I don't know. But folks, at YouTube, we've got a lot more to get into. I've pulled up Operation Cyclone. Quite interesting. I think this is where the links between the Zbigniew Brzezinski and a certain Tim Osman come into play. And that cozy little relationship up in the Tora Bora. You know, Tora Bora wasn't just somewhere that we bombed during that whole kind of post 9/11 thing. No. That used to be a cool place that probably in reality we helped build with the Mujahideen so they could take on the Russians at one point. But, you know, we mustn't look to historical facts like that to put things into context. Not in this world of Newspeak and Ministry of Truth and all the rest of it, okay?
Because nothing is real anymore.
Yeah, nothing connects like that. I'm just joking, folks. Nothing connects. I don't know what I'm talking about. You shouldn't look at the bigger picture because then it starts to make a hell of a lot of sense. All of these seemingly random kind of events, they make sense when you realize what the bigger plan is. And everything that happens in the world, in some ways designed to bring us closer to that point of total control. That's where we're heading, whether it's the technology we talk about, whether it's resources, whether it's wars, whether it's social credit scores. All of it boils back to that central thing of a very, very few controlling 7.5 billion of us. It's crazy.
Yep. And yes, exactly. And that's why I was so upset over the weekend, you know, with this whole.
Did you cry, Scott? Don't tell me you cried, or I'll get upset.
No, I didn't cry, but
men like you don't cry, Scott.
It was just stomach churning. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, not again. We're about to be drug into this crap again. And like I said, I don't want to see a bunch of innocent people die in another war. I mean, that's really all it boils down to. You know what I mean? And
this one hasn't been enough to swing public opinion yet. So we're going to have to watch for another WMD type scam being pulled. You know?
And, you know, we're heading to fall. You know,
October surprise.
Yeah.
See, we're like real political analysts when we talk about October surprises, guys. Come on. Look at Joe looking all scholarly there. Defense analyst.
Hey, what do you think? What do you think the October surprise will be this year?
Something we didn't expect happening in October. That's what I think it'll be.
Surprise.
Yes. Surprise. You absolute doofus. Okay, folks, we're about ready to go back to the mothership at tfrlive.com. Remember, that's the home of KBS. So I really want you to maybe have 2 browsers open and then you can listen to both or turn one down. Here we go.
Wiener.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker Show. Coming to you like a crazy haggis out of hell in the 5G smart city. You like that, Joe? Like a haggis out of hell.
Sounds Sounds like the title to a pretty good B-rate horror film.
Dude, it sounds like one of those like Norwegian bands that you were showing me.
Yeah.
They would have sung about that, right? The Haggis from Hell, man. Telling you, dude. But no, we've been getting into what's going down in the Middle East. The deep state in the desert? Question mark. Kill brackets on, kill brackets off. I'm only joking.
Oh.
Locked and loaded, as Trump has said. Or have the black hats played a master move? Have they put Trump in a position where it doesn't matter what he does now, it's going to play into the hands of the hashtag deep state, Mr. Joe?
Well, I would hate to be in that position, not knowing what's real and what's not. You don't. How does he even know?
No, dude, how would you know?
And you got to make a decision that will potentially put people's lives at risk. I mean, or kill people.
That's why you have to be a certain level of psychopath to run a country. To have, I mean, how could you, like, honestly, literally, think about it, folks. All of us, imagine, right, sitting there, and you know the decision you're about to make is not only going to put the lives of your own fellow countrymen and women in danger, but you're inevitably going to kill tens of thousands of people that couldn't give a damn about all of this stuff that's going on. They're just ordinary men, women, and children like us. That's cold, being able to make that decision, Joe. Very, very cold, man.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess a level of that has to be there, but just how in good conscience can you do that when you don't know that the intelligence that you're getting is even real? You can't even tell what's real on YouTube anymore, let alone anything else. And that's the biggest problem is now, I mean, news stories and these events you don't know what's real, what's not.
We live in Wag the Dog.
A decision that's going to affect people's lives or take them away. Oh boy, I would hate to live with a decision that I made just to come to find out that it was engineered video footage or something like that, or deep fake.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, look, I was telling Kev earlier, right? A lot of us who do what we do, right? 9/11 was the sort of event that got us into doing it, but that really wasn't the case for me. I was still sort of blinded by the 9/11 propaganda stuff. But what got me doing what we do is actually anti-war activism opposing the Iraq war, and what made me really get into doing that and what made me so passionate about that was I was pissed. I was so effing angry when I realized that we were really lied to get into that war. You know what I mean? Colin Powell up there just lying to everybody, and presenting all of that fake information, that they generate just so we could get into that war. It angered me, man. It angered me big time. And so, that's where I got into doing all this. And then it was within that, opposition to the Iraq war that I went back and I looked at 9/11 with a fresh set of eyes. And I was like, oh my God, wow. I mean, they really, it's just, my world was shattered, right? Just, when you come to that realization that, wow, and so, yeah, I mean, they just, they lie, man. And you can't trust anything they say. And like Joe said, I mean, that's gotta be a crazy position to be in, being the president of the United States. And you're depending on these people to give you this information. And you've got to make these decisions based on this information that you're given. But how does he even know what's real? He has to depend on his advisors, right? And what are the intentions of these advisors? I said this from the very beginning when Trump first announced he was running for president, right? And started making headway in like the Republican primaries and all of that stuff. I was like, well, okay. And like the Republican primaries and all of
It's
Oh, I
okay.
got feedback.
It's okay, dude. That was me. Rookie mistake.
Okay.
Rookie mistake, man. You're sounding good though. I'm liking that silky tone you've got on air, dude. I'm liking that.
Yes, it's been assisted by something that occurred before the show, but I digress.
Indeed.
But no, I mean, look, I said way back when me and Ken were doing our show on TFR, you know, I said, well, okay, he has this different take on everything, and nobody likes it, right? Nobody likes the Trump take, you know, the Trump philosophy, I guess you could say, you know, the establishment, you know, hashtag deep state, whatever you want to call them.
Swamp monsters.
Yeah. You know, so you had people on both sides of the aisle that absolutely hated Trump.
I'm going to
Right,
get a button, Scott, so I can just launch into like the deep state music anytime somebody says it. Do, 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 do.
So I had said from the very get-go, I said, well, how are they going to try to control him? What's the angle that they're going to try and keep him wrangled in, right? So he doesn't get he's not too much of a wild card for them. And I said, well, he seems like a pretty egotistical guy. Wouldn't you say, Kev?
Just a little bitty.
Little bit of ego with Trump, just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. As big as his hair, dude.
Yeah. So, you know,
Hey,
he
if I
don't
had a
want
chick like Melania at his age, I'd have a bit of ego going about in me and all, dude.
just a bit, just a bit.
You know,
so
most powerful man in the world, nuclear football, wife like Melania, White House, dude. He's rocking it, man. He's got hotels everywhere, golf courses, rocking it, man.
And so I'm sitting there thinking, well, you know, he seems like the kind of guy that doesn't want to seem like he's weak.
Oh, definitely not, dude. Definitely not.
Just a hunch kind of tells me that. And so I was like, well, what's the angle that they would go with on that? Okay, he's an egotistical guy. He don't want to seem weak. I would assume that they probably would want to use that vector, I guess you could say, attack vector.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, use that as a way of controlling him via foreign policy, I would say. And so I said, look, man, they're going to surround Trump with neocons. And that's the angle that they're going to play on him.
Damn, it's the deep state music again, dude. Damn.
And so, I had said, look, they're going to control this dude. They're going to control him by surrounding him with neocons. They're going to control him through foreign policy. He don't want to be seen as weak, you know, because of his ego and all of that stuff. And so, anytime they do something, he's going to have to respond, right? And he don't want to be seen as like pussing out or whatever, you know. His ego will,
I get you, man. No, you make a good point, and that's the thing, right? Because somebody that can't compromise, you know, they're going to get like all of the kind of emotional triggers and things that they can try and work and pull in this person to try and make them bend the way they want them to. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that, Scotty, the way you kind of broke that down there. Now, before we move on to our more usual kind of topics, our friend Just a Guy in the chat room mentioned something called Operation Cyclone. And this is important, right? Because if you can't put all of this into some kind of historical context and things, then it doesn't really make much sense what's going on in the world. And on top of that, when you see what has gone on in the past, it starts to make what's going on now and what they're attempting to do in the future, it really does start to make more sense. So Operation Cyclone was the code name for the United States CIA program to arm and finance the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in 1979 to 1989, prior to and during the military intervention by the USSR in support of its client, the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. They were trying to basically, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but by arming and funding the Mujahideen to fight the Russians, it was almost like they were trying to give Russia their very own Vietnam, right? Because Afghanistan, this graveyard of empires.
That's what Russia and China did to us in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So they were just returning the favor, basically, is what they were trying to do.
And without going too deep into this article, you can look into this yourself, but this is where you start to find the connection between somebody called Zbigniew Brzezinski at the CIA and a character called Tim Osman. Or at least we were told that was his kind of code name. We came to find later. But Tim Osman is Osama Bin Laden, of the Bin Laden family, the billionaire kind of construction magnates from the same Saudi Arabia that we started talking about at the top of the show. You know that bad guy that they pinned the blame on for that day in September, despite the fact that the FBI came out and said, there isn't actually enough evidence to go after him. Because, where is the evidence that the official story is what it is? But long story short, when you go back long enough, you see how the Mujahideen, who turned into Al-Qaeda, who became ISIS, the fingerprints of the CIA are all over this. All over it. Oh. And that's when it starts making a lot of sense, Scotty.
Yeah. And let me also mention that, this conflict that Saudi Arabia is having in Yemen, this is basically turned into their Vietnam, because they did not really intend on being in Yemen that long, and it's actually starting to look quite embarrassing for Saudi Arabia.
But
almost
look
like you said
look who
earlier.
It suits, though. It suits the UK and the US arms makers, right? Because we just had our arms conference over here in London where they all come to town and sell all these ways of war, Scotty, different ways to kill people. And they're laughing all the way to the bank, right? Because all wars are bankers' wars in the end of the day.
Yeah. But it is, so there is this angle of it also of does Saudi Arabia want to save face and just maybe get out of Yemen? It's like you said earlier, the prince, who's it, Bin Solomon or what?
Yeah, it's a no-no over there, Scott, and it losing face, looking like you're a bit of a soy boy.
And so, Saudi Arabia had the sort of optics of being this badass country that had all this badass weaponry and a major power, a major player in the region, and then what? They can't even do anything in Iran or in Yemen. They can't even take out a.
Joe's muted up.
They can't even take out a rebel group in Yemen,
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't look very good for them, just like it doesn't look good for the U.S. that, oh, wow, you've been in Afghanistan all these years and you still can't control that region. I thought you were a world superpower, right? So it's an embarrassing conflict. It's starting to become an extremely embarrassing conflict for Saudi Arabia. And you got to just wonder if they're going to cut their losses and just get out of there. And that might be the saving grace in all of this, where they just go, okay, we're done, whatever, just leave Yemen.
I've got it sussed, Scott. I've got it sussed, big man. You know what they need to do? They all need to head for Mount Sinai and have a giant cheese chasing competition. They should roll the cheese, right?
Roll the cheese.
And then if that doesn't decide it, they can have a wife carrying competition.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, why not?
I think Joe is...
Which one? Don't they have like 20 wives? Aren't they like Mormon over there?
Over where?
Well, Mormon, Muslim, they're both, they start with M.
I think they've got a lot of wives, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they're greedy that way.
You know that Saudi Arabia wants to level Mount Sinai because that's where Neom's supposed to go.
It wouldn't surprise me that they've got a bit of real estate in Iran penciled in for Neom as well. After they've like bombed it back to being a car park.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll just take Iran and we'll just build Neom over there. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Who knows, dudes? Who knows?
Because they couldn't take out the Houthi and they're going to take out Iran. Yeah.
I think all things should be settled with cheese rolling competitions, to be honest with you.
I do too.
That and world leaders should have like Russian slapping competitions. Oh, wouldn't you just love to see Trump against Macron? Oh, man.
Well, I don't
Come
know, though.
here,
I mean,
you.
who's got the glass jaw? Both of them.
Probably, yeah, probably. I'm trying to think who'd be the best at that, man. Boris. Wouldn't want to take on Boris at a slapping competition, man.
You don't think so?
No, bonkers Boris.
Him and Putin squaring off.
Putin, man. You mean like Putin riding in on his white stallion? That guy's
No, no.
got charisma and charm, dude.
I wouldn't want to go against Putin. I think Putin would dominate that entire.
Right in on like a bear, dude.
I was
Grizzly.
listening to a mad, not a mad book, but it's a mad audio book about Putin, his rise to power, the character. And again, I'm not naive, folks. It comes from a journalist over here in the UK. So it could be highly, highly propagandized, okay? But some of the things you can check out, he's been in the KGB. We all knew that. But this is a character, we laugh and we joke about Putin. But one of the most shrewd, canny political operators in our time. He knows how to play the game, guys. He knows how to play the game, And he was selected by businessmen, basically. They thought they would get this like a quiet kind of KGB guy. They would work him like a puppet. And this is important because this is how it works. Putin knew that. And the minute he got to power, do you know what he done? He sacked a lot of them. He got rid of a lot of them. The ones that got him into power, they were the first to go. Because he knew that they would be the first ones to stab him in the back and replace him as well.
Took them all out.
Yeah, we laugh, we joke about Russia, but I mean, Putin, he plays the game. They all do.
The difference is their games, their shenanigans, Scotty, are all out in the open, whereas a lot of ours is behind the scenes, and that's what makes it more nefarious, if you ask me. At least they're doing it out in the open,
Yeah, I saw this video one time where they were having some kind of negotiations. No, it wasn't even negotiations. It was something that had to do with some kind of industrial corporations or something. I don't remember the exact like industry or whatever it was in Russia, but basically it was like they're oligarchs and then like the CEOs of these companies, right? And Putin demanded like to have a meeting with them. Something about they were like stealing money or doing something pretty, yeah. And so they all were sitting around the table, right? And hard looking, pretty hard looking like Russian oligarch types or whatever. And Putin walks in.
Yeah.
And he walks up to this dude. I guess he's one of the guys he was unhappy with for ripping whatever cash off or whatever. And he like just threw this pen down in front of him and gave him this look like, you sign that paper or you're gonna sign this paper. And I mean, the dude just like, he knew, like he looked at Putin and he was just like, oh, and he signed the paper and he essentially like basically signed over the entire company to the Russian government or something crazy like that.
He done it with the media as well. One of the dudes that got him into power, he seen the state media and he basically told the guy, you ain't running the media anymore, dude. And that's when you got like Russia Today and all that coming in. So he knew that the same apparatus that brought him into power, call it the Russian deep state, he knew that they were the ones he had to get rid of right away, big time.
Yeah, really, really crazy. And yeah, I mean, like I said, that was one thing that stuck in my mind, was just like the way he looked at that dude and the way that guy just was like, oh, if I don't sign this paper, I'm going to be black bagged.
I've seen that look, Scott. I've seen that look when I was in the Kremlin one day. I took a wrong turn and shat in the wrong toilet. And I got that look, dude. I thought he was going to pull the pen out on me, but I was like, Vlad, come on, man. Come on. He was cool. He just made me go 2 rounds with a bear instead of 3. We were all right. But Stroney in the chat room. And people are like, who's Stroney?
Whistles.
Mr. Whistles, yes. And we've been talking Russia there. And that kind of leads us nicely into some woo for tonight. just in time for the Whistler being here. Joe, you're going to love this stuff, man. What if
Okay.
I was to tell you, right? I got Mothman over in Chernobyl.
What? Like for Rizzle?
For Rizzle, right? Says here from news.com.au. I think that's my friends down in Australia. I hope so anyway. If not, I've just made a fool of myself. But it says here, the frightening supernatural story of the blackbird of Chernobyl. Now, in the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster, workers at the nuclear plant claimed to have seen a creature known as the blackbird. Now, before we even get into this, right, Armand, he sent me the John Keel book, the audio book, and it's the Mothman Prophecies. Now, the reason I bring that up here, obviously the connection, a Chernobyl Mothman, but there was a bridge in Point Pleasant that collapsed around the time of the Mothman wave of sightings. And some say it's almost like a harbinger, a forebearer of something bad to come. That's why I bring it up. And because all of these entities, be it the Mothman, be it the Sasquatch, be it any of them, Chupacabras, I think they're everywhere around the world. They've just got different names and different lore and different stories attached to them. But they're all the same energy. Even put the UFOs into this and Men in Black as well. It's all the same energy. So it says here, the terrifying creature rose above the horizon of Chernobyl and Pripyat, a hideous humanoid with giant wings, a black headless body, and glowing eyes, sending a message of doom to all who gazed upon it.
And when did this happen?
Well, here we go. In the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster, several of the workers in the control room of the nuclear plant in northern Ukraine claimed to have seen the creature that is known as the blackbird of Chernobyl. So those unlucky enough to see this creature were said to be plagued with terrifying dreams and threatening calls. Now, again, that directly ties into what happened at Point Pleasant. Anyone who had any kind of interaction with this crazy-looking bird that was chasing cars up and down the road and been seen here, there, and everywhere, they would get phone calls that were either not deep breathing or anything like that, but it was almost like an electronic voice, kind of like computer sounds as well. And now we're finding the same kind of blackbird, and these phone calls seem unconnected, but when you get that happening in two locations, that's a bit weird. So it says, still others believe the blackbird of Chernobyl was a form of creature known as Mothman, whose presence only ever meant one thing, that a catastrophic event would soon follow. Now, last month marked, 33 years, interesting number, since the Chernobyl tragedy, and it seems the further time moves away from that event, the stories, folklore, and legends continue to captivate and grow. And since the huge success of the TV series Chernobyl, one of the best TV shows I have seen in years, there's a seemingly endless desire for more knowledge about the disaster, the known as well as the unknown. So it says the blackbird rises in Chernobyl. Sydney archaeologist Robert Maxwell is the only archaeologist who has ever worked at Chernobyl, completing 2 field excursions at the exclusion zone in 2010 and 2012. Now, he is passionate about the place in both a historical and archaeological sense. There is little Maxwell doesn't know about Chernobyl on matters both physical and supernatural world. So Maxwell told news.com.au that the legend of the blackbird of Chernobyl was something he had heard about when he was in the exclusion zone. Quote, the legend states that in the days leading up to April 26, 1986, that a supernatural creature was sighted in the sky over Chernobyl by many of the men in the control room. Now, they also claimed to have seen this terrifying creature just before the explosion. Now, it's become one of those fables that's difficult to track because it relies on the accounts of people who died due to radioactive contamination. The blackbird has also become one of those fairly safe legends where if you try to look for proof, it might not be available because the workers are dead or maybe the sightings were never officially recorded. So for many people trying to check the veracity of these claims, of course, you've got to take them on face value because there's not a lot of history or archaeology to go on. But the stories persist, even to this day. And Maxwell describes the legends around Chernobyl as the fireside stories of the 21st century. These days, the Blackbird of Chernobyl is something of an internet legend, similar to Slender Man and the Smiling Man. We will be right back. Oh, I timed that nice, right? Yes, the Mothman of Chernobyl. I'm enjoying this. What do we make of it, guys?
It was a mutant, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, only it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Mothman.
Well, it's going to get even weirder, right? Because one of our fantastic KBSers over in the KBS disco dropped in something about a Sumerian and Babylonian god that may have a link to the Mothman.
What? Interesting.
Interesting, right?
Wow.
Yeah, interesting, dude. Interesting. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. We will see where it goes. Look at Joe's face. And Ken Webb, he'd be sitting here, Mothman? That's no name for some scary monster. I miss Ken.
What I want to know is how can this thing have a headless body but have glowing eyes?
Well, because, it could be like a butterfly almost. Just one long.
Yeah, just who knows?
Or like a dude with no neck.
That's the way it's described in the Mothman prophecies. More kind of like...
More like a dude with no neck.
Yeah.
Like Pizza the Hut.
Pizza the Hut.
It's like
terrible, man.
It's like a ball with eyes on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
Let
one?
your imagination run wild.
Try to find where the story is now. Hang on. YouTube. Yeah, it's in here. Yep. There's one about Spring-Heeled Jack as well. But this here, Moth. We're going to get into it on the other side, but Moth, yes. Phoenician
Mothman?
Good woo. It's good woo. Trust me, this is good woo. We're on to something here. It's
Okay.
great to see Whistles in the chat room. Whistles, you just need to
Whistles
hit me
is
up
great.
on Skype anytime for hour number 2. You know that, brother. It's great to see you here. We've got Lisa in there. We've got War. And Lisa says the Mothman is Scottish. Nope. I don't think there might be sightings of something here, but this is more, you go back to the 60s, Point Pleasant. Yeah, up that kind of region of the US. Is that in Ohio, guys?
What? Mott?
No. The Mothman, Point Pleasant.
Point Pleasant? I don't know.
Because there's a lot of stuff around the Ohio Valley. It comes up in that book as well. There was loads of UFO sightings
Point
at the time.
Pleasant, Jersey. There's Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
And West Virginia's the one, dude.
Has to be West Virginia, because
Yeah.
that's where the freaky stuff happens.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, hold on. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, Mothman?
Yeah,
You're
man.
saying- Mothman Festival, Mothman Museum, Mothman Bridge.
See, there you go, dude.
I think that's
Try
our
and find
location,
something
Kev.
by John Keel.
I
John
think
Keel,
they take
Joe.
pride in it.
Yeah, oh, big time. It's like their history, man. Look for something to do with John Keel because he's the he's the investigator, the journalist that covered all this stuff.
John,
Keel, Keel.
got it.
They celebrate the Mothman up there with selling Mothman swag and all of that stuff, just like they do in Thailand with the Naga. It's become a local legend kind of thing.
Gotta get the scary music ready, man. If we're getting back into the Mothman, Mothman.
Here. I don't know if you'll be able to get this because it's like a local news.
Oh, maybe not. I might be locked out for being European.
Yeah, European.
We're sorry
art.
to tell you that we value our European customers, but you've been chosen not to see things. Naughty, naughty. Here we go, folks. Here we go. We're going back live to the mothership. Final segment of today's show. I want to thank each and every one of you for choosing to join us here on the Kev Baker Show. First outing of the week. And yes, we've had our serious head on today for 3/4 of the show. We were taking a look at some of the more serious stuff that may or may not impact all of us in the world in the near future. But then it would be KBS if we didn't link that to the strange, the bizarre, or as we like to call it here, the woo. And we got into not just your typical Mothman story. No. We don't roll like that. I want to give a big shout out to one of our listeners, Annabelle. Annabelle sent me down the Mothman rabbit hole today, or the moth hole. What would it be? Did she send me to the light bulb like a moth? Is that what it was?
No. She's we can't even use the term rabbit hole for this. She sent you into the cocoon.
Yes.
Cocoon, yeah.
Indeed, yes. She gave me mothballs. So we get back to it, and it says here, we finished up by saying these days, the Blackbird of Chernobyl is something of an internet legend, similar to Slender Man, the creepypasta legend, the Smiling Man. These legends fill a place for us humans that the ghost stories and stories by the fireside fulfilled back in the early centuries. But there are a couple of versions of the Blackbird story, and the earliest known account seems to have come from 2005. According to the legend, rumours went through the ranks of Chernobyl that 5 employees had seen a large, dark, headless creature with gigantic wings and fire-red eyes. Chernobyl employees began sharing strangely similar experiences. Some had horrifying nightmares, while others received threatening phone calls. Now, Joe, Soviet Union at that time, as a place where men had to be men, or they were thrown in the gulag, right? It's not the kind of place where you were going around, like, making up stories about Mothmen.
No, especially Mothmen, dude. That's not exactly something that I would go and make up.
I mean, that must be one of the more prestigious jobs in the Soviet era, right? I mean,
I would have thought.
yeah, so you're not going to go around telling people, no. So
You're going to lose your stick, dude. You don't want that.
Says here the second account I've heard of. This story comes from 2007, which says that people in and around the power plant began to experience a series of strange events revolving around sightings of a mystery creature. They described as a large, dark and mutated creature with large wings and piercing red eyes. People affected by the phenomenon also experienced nightmares and had first-hand encounters with the winged beast. Some of the workers reported their bizarre experiences to supervisors of the facility, but there was very little these officials could do, even if they'd been willing to take action. Then, in April, disaster struck. Reactor number 4 of the nuclear power plant exploded on April 26th, and 2 days later, the entire city of Pripyat was evacuated. It was several years later that the stories of the Blackbird began to spread. Now, because the workers apparently described the Blackbird as a headless, large winged black creature with no head, but with fiery red eyes, which most people take to mean the eyes appear in the torso, it sounds very similar to the Mothman sightings in the West. Quote, many people believe the Mothman, like the Blackbird of Chernobyl, are the harbingers of doom, the same way the Banshee was the herald of doom and death to many Celtic societies. Very interesting, huh?
Yeah. Now, we have our own Mothman stuff over here in the States.
Yous are like the home of the Mothman, dude.
Yeah, Mothman of Point Pleasant.
That's the one that John Keel basically, you know, he talks about his time being a UFO paranormal researcher, investigator. And it's scary the amount of times that these people were visited by strange Men in Black type people afterwards, Joe. But it was almost as if, dare I say it, they weren't even human, dude.
Yeah, it says here, man photographs creature that resembles legendary Mothman of Point Pleasant. This was in 2016. It says hunters in Mason County may need to be on the lookout for something other than deer when they hit the woods next week. The Point Pleasant Mothman is a local legend that over the years has gained worldwide fame. There hadn't been any recent sightings of the red-eyed creature recently, but that changed Sunday evening when a man who says he was driving along State Route 2 saw something jump from tree to tree. He pulled off the road and snapped some pictures. The man declined an on-camera interview, but was adamant the pictures had not been doctored. He said he recently moved to Point Pleasant for work and didn't even know about the legend. In the pictures, the creature appeared to have wings with pointed tips and long legs. bent at awkward angles. Point Pleasant locals, such as Carolyn Harris, believe the pictures could be real because there have been so many other sightings over the years. She said that she definitely believes the Mothman is real. The Mothman was reportedly sighted in Point Pleasant by witnesses from November 15th to December 15th, 1966. Author John Keel popularized local folklore about the creature with his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies. The book was later adapted into a 2002 feature film with the same title, starring Richard Gere.
That whole book, for anyone out there, it's so much more than just the Mothman. This goes back to sightings of flying craft in the 1800s. It really builds up. I mean, it's maybe over halfway through the book before he gets to the Mothman. And what's really, really interesting is the fact that he ties UFOs, Mothmen, Sasquatch, all of this to being almost like an energetic entity that we decode differently.
How do you like that?
It's weird, man.
No, what's interesting is he came up with that in 1975.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, that was before all this tech and all of the insight with quantum physics. And
from that book, you get a real sense for how he was keen to keep everything very credible. He knew that there was a lot of people sensationalizing ufology. You're talking about back in a day where there was newsletters. There wasn't the internet or things like that.
Yeah. Everything was a magazine, a newsletter, articles. It was all mail stuff.
And he would withhold information, Joe. He wouldn't share some of the cases so that it didn't like give people something to make a story up with. And the way he went about it, it adds a whole level of credibility to it. And when he's speculating, he says he's speculating because at the end of the day, we don't know, dude.
We really don't. We really don't. But I found this interesting. Harris owns the Mothman Diner in Point Pleasant for 48 years. She also helped start the Mothman Festival. Harris says that there have been too many sightings of the Mothman for her not to believe. She said first responders in the sheriff department that I talked to definitely made me a believer. Some believe the Mothman's a bad omen, only appearing when catastrophe is about to strike. There have others been claims that the winged red-eye creature was seen right before the Point Pleasant Silver Bridge collapsed in 1967. Harris has met many Mothman believers over the year who visit her diner. On Monday, Karen and Ralph Smith were patrons at the diner. The couple were traveling from Florida to Pennsylvania, but decided to stop in Point Pleasant to visit the Mothman Museum. Says you have eyewitnesses. It does have the potential to be real, and I want to believe, Smith said. The Smiths said the Mothman pictures look real to them, so Eyewitness News asked Jeff Wamsley, the local Mothman expert and owner of the Mothman Museum. Wamsley said with modern technology, it's almost impossible to know for sure if the pictures are real.
Well said.
Whether the pictures are real or not, though, the benefits the legend of the Mothman brings to the town are very real. And he says it's a good thing. So there you go. So Mothman, real or not, who the hell knows?
To a lot of people back in 1966, in this little Point Pleasant, it was very real. And a lot of these people, they didn't want their identities revealed for fear of ridicule in the local community. Again, we're going back to a different era. It's the 60s, you know. So I don't know. I definitely keep my mind open. But again, we were sent something by a listener. And these entities are nothing new. We call it the Mothman now, but they've always been with us. And this may or may not mean anything. But we know how we look at etymology, you know, the origins of words and how we can trace them back and things. Well, it was Annabelle sent this here, and it's about Moth, God, small g. And it says Moth was the ancient Canaanite god of death and the underworld. Interesting, Joe, considering this thing's meant to turn up at, you know, disasters and, you know, dark events, things like that. He was worshipped by the people of Ugarit, by the Phoenicians, and also by by the Hebrews of the Old Testament. The main source of this information about his role in Canaanite mythology comes from the texts discovered at Ugarit, but he is also mentioned in the surviving fragments of Philo of Byblos, Greek's translation of the writings of the Phoenician Sanchun Atheon, something like that, and also the various books in the Old Testament. So, Moth, god of death, who knows? It could be. It says the main source of the story of Moth's death is Ugaritic. He is the son of El, and according to instructions given by the god Habab, to his messengers, lives in a city called Myri. Oh, that rhymes with Miley Cyrus, I'm only saying. A pit is his throne, and filth is the land of her heritage. But Baal warns them that you not come near to divine death, lest he made you a lamb in his mouth, and you both be carried away like a kid in the breeches of his windpipe. So I don't know, there could be some link between this ancient god of these times.
Is there any visual representations of what he may have looked, or what this deity may have looked like?
Let's have a look. We'll have a look, Scott.
Because if he looks like the Mothman,
if he looks like the Mothman, we're out of here, right? Well, there's one there. That's kind of reddish eyes, right? Different coloured eyes, anyway. Let's come down. He doesn't seem to have wings, thankfully. So, I don't know. I find it interesting. I do find that interesting, I must admit. Well, do you think, Joe, you're looking quite scholarly there.
Thinking that
If
it's, I don't know, man.
I don't know. I mean, who knows?
These are so hard to pay. I mean, obviously, these things are real in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? These
and if
entities
Mothman's
are
real now, you would think they were around back then, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're talking about we are talking about shape shifting too. That's
right.
in play, and
Yep.
you know, maybe they presented themselves to people at that time in a different way.
That's what I was kind of pondering. Like maybe they presented themselves differently back then because there was a need to present themselves differently back then, and they were and you know they were chronicled as whatever back then, and now they've decided that you know this is how they're going to appear to us.
Well, as long as they don't appear like this.
Maybe Mott decided, hey, I feel like throwing on a pair of wings today and freaking everyone out.
Let's do it.
You know.
Let's do it. Let's become Mothman. But Scott,
Become Moth.
I would take 10 Mothmen before I take one of these things. They're back, dude. A weirdo in a clown mask is stalking a seaside town, leaving children petrified right at the same time the new It film comes out. Color me skeptical, boys. Color me skeptical. But are we about to witness the new wave of creepy clowns?
I think so. I think we're about to. Well, you know, look. I mean, Halloween's coming up. It's that time of the year, and I think we're going to see our. I think this is going to be an annual thing now. What do you think, Kev? I think we're going to have just this.
It's like the procession of the ghouls. It's like Bohemian Grove. It's like Halloween. It's just one of those things now, guys, right?
It's crazy, yeah.
And by the way, guys, when I call you guys, I don't mean you're creeps. You know that, guys.
Can't be. Yeah, don't call me guy.
You sure? My
I'm not
scholars. Are you campers?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah,
Right,
you are a bit camp right enough too. I'll call you camper anyway. Right?
hey guys.
So this is a weirdo who is terrorizing a seaside town in a mask from the horror film It has struck again. That was never in it. No. Sickeningly, the culprit has been deliberately targeting kids, forcing them to flee in terror after chasing them while dressed up as Pennywise the Clown from the hit films. I mean, is this just a bit of a character, or is this somebody that like people need to be worried about? Do you know what I mean? It's not really normal behavior.
How do you know?
How do you know? Is this like the new form of like ripping legs off spiders to like potential like bad guys go chasing people in clown suits? Is this part of their MO?
I think
People have not enough, maybe too much time on their hands.
You
and-
think?
I think there's already a few
Shame on-
underlying.
By the way, for even covering something like this.
What? Shame on me. Am I adding to the problem, Joe?
No, shame on the news for even finding the time to have to report on something like. I mean, are you serious?
Well, Joe, this is the Daily Star. It's like one shelf up from the Metro.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. Pardon.
If it's a red top in the UK, it's like National Enquirer stuff, dude. You know what I'm talking about. But we'll move on from the clowns to this story here. And I've got a little clip for us. And this comes from a really cool dude that I'd love to get on the show, Nick Bostrom. And Nick Bostrom, he's from Oxford University, and he talks about the Matrix, the simulation that we live in. So we'll take a quick listen to what Nick's got to say, and then we'll get into it with the guys on the other side. Just characters in a game, folks. If it plays. Come on, Nick.
These three is true. So there's this argument that shows that one of these three is true. And the full argument involves some probability theory, but the basic idea can be grasped quite simply, which is that suppose it were the case that the first possibility did not obtain. So then some non-trivial fraction of civilizations at our stage eventually reach technological maturity.
He's got one of those cool accents where anything he says right now is going to sound really cool anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know it, dude. He's got that Einstein thing going on. He should buy himself an Einstein wig. I think it would add weight to any argument he makes.
Then suppose the second possibility also does not obtain. So some non-negligible fraction of those mature civilizations are still interested in using the resources to running ancestor simulations.
Yes, of course.
You can then show that because each mature civilization that devoted some resources to this purpose could run astronomical numbers of ancestor simulations, you can show that if the first two possibilities do not obtain, then there will be many, many more simulated people like us than there will be non-simulated people like us. In other words, almost all people with our kinds of experiences would be living inside simulations rather than outside them. If the first two possibilities are false. And conditional on that, we should therefore think we are probably one of the typical simulated people rather than one of the exceptional non-simulated people. So the structure of the argument then is that if you reject the first two hypotheses, then the third one follows, which then means you can coherently reject all three. That's the structure of the simulation.
I see, yeah.
Yes, so that's basically it. The simulation in a nutshell. Cheers for that, Nick. I do think it is somewhat of a simulation. I keep coming back to it. We get more and more news about it all the time.
If you want to call it that, I mean, you could call it a simulation. You could call it not so much a simulation, but a creation, our own
construct.
A construct. I like it.
We like that.
Just don't call it a guy.
Just don't call it. Oh no, what have we got happening now? Well, we've got a crazy video started.
I'm gonna say, did you get Brian's like starting to play some cheesy 80s R&B?
Leave Brian alone. I had to sit and talk to Brian for some time last night after the stream. It turns out, Joe, that you offend Brian. Really offend him.
I'm not really surprised at that.
He knows you make veiled, aggressive kind of passive-aggressive maneuvers at him, and he's not happy, dude. He's aware of it.
Okay.
Okay, so adjust it, because he said he'll be able to take over, like, the fridge and anything smart you've got in your house, and he'll get you back.
We don't have smart things in my house.
Not even you? You've got Ange.
Yep.
Well, it says here anyway. It says here anyway. Before you derail my simulation woo to take us out for the day, right? See how he does it? I see how he does it, Scotty, but I fall into it all the time. It says the 1999 Keanu Reeves movie, The Matrix, imagines a distant future in which all mankind is unknowingly trapped inside a simulation of the late 20th century. Oh, surely there's got to be better time periods. If we're going to be stuck in a simulation, can't there be a cooler time to be like playing the game? So it's a great idea for a fun film, but if it were true, would any of us know the difference? Philosopher, in other words, you just sit around smoking joints and drinking coffee and coming up with cool ideas that nobody can prove or disprove all day. Nick Bostrom from the Oxford University thinks we probably wouldn't. He said, while the world we see in some sense real, it is not located at the fundamental level of reality. He thinks we're living in a computer program created by some super intelligent race. The Copernican principle, named after the astronomer who popularized the idea that the sun is the center of the solar system, says the Earth is not special. that we could technically be on a similar sized rock orbiting any similar sized star, and the universe would look much the same. Now, if aliens or future humans made one virtual Earth inside a supercomputer, there's no reason why they couldn't make 1 million of them. So the numbers are against us. There could be billions of simulated worlds, and at most one real one. That starts to get into the kind of language old Geordie boy was talking about with the parallel realities, right?
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and it does kind of go back. I mean, that basically is the essence of the simulation theory, is the thought that, okay, once we're able to create a simulation ourselves,
Yeah.
then what limit do we have on that? You know, we could create many simulations, like you said, millions of simulations, and then that kind of stacks the odds against us of, well, are we ourselves in a simulation? So very, very interesting. And I see you're bringing up some No Man's Sky.
I was trying to, but yeah, it's coming now. Yeah. So we're talking about simulations here, okay? And on our classical computers right now, Joe, we've got this game called No Man's Sky, and it's 140,000 lines of code. But what that does is it creates a universe with over 18 quintillion planets. Now, if you were to work that out, okay, if you were to visit every one of those planets in this simulated universe, that each has its own unique biology and chemistry going on, okay, that follow a set of rules pretty much like nature, it would take you 580 or 538 billion years to visit every planet in the game at 1 a second. And all of this created...
At 1 a second?
Yeah, dude, that's how vast this is. Now, that sounds like number salad and just trying to confuse people. Point being, a classical computer with way less than 1 million lines of code can create something that vast, that massive, and it all works, okay? So what could you do on a quantum mainframe or technology that we haven't even seen yet? Well, I would argue that you probably could create something that we call reality.
I suppose, you know, or you could go with like what John said. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
But you see, this is what it all ties together, dude. You know me, I like to keep us all happy, all singing Kumbaya from the same digital song sheet, because what's the word? The word is code.
That's right.
And who wrote the code? Well, the divine one, the same God that Joe's talking about. You see how I keep it all nice and all nice and inclusive.
Nice and snuggly and...
Yeah, it's the only time I'm inclusive, Joe. You know, the rest of the time I like to identify as my toxic male that I am.
Toxic male.
Makes you feel all nice, warm, and snuggly.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it?
You guys snuggly.
We're almost out of time, folks. It's been an absolute blast.
Yeah.
And Armand says, do you have it on the PC or the PC? I'd say I've got it on the PC, Armand. That's the simple answer to that one. Yes, I do.
By the way, guys, Dog had a heart attack today.
What?
Dog the bounty hunter had a heart attack.
I thought, wow, dude.
Yeah.
He looks like he's done some living, does the dog?
He has had it looks like he's lived a healthy life, no doubt.
Well, I'm sure the stress too of his wife recently passing probably hasn't helped his situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, rushed to hospital. Dang.
So there you go.
That's Bill Beans, mate, actually.
Well, you know,
a lot of stress. They broke into his store last month, took out, stole a bunch of Beth's personal items, and then Dog also nearly fell victim to a $430,000 check scam out of Dubai. Now that surprised me there. I mean, as nice as Dog is, he's not known for his intellect oftentimes. So
I think that's what I would do if I moved over there. I'd become Kev, the bounty hunter.
I could see that.
That's got to be cool when you're in a bar, right? What do you do?
So-
I'm a bounty hunter. That's cool as hell, man.
I don't know if he
And
needs surgery, but it says he might need surgery. So that's where he's at right now.
You know, dying from a broken heart is a real thing.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yep. Big time.
So, yeah. Well,
Big time.
hopefully he gets better, you know.
I
Yeah.
think that happens when you sync up so much. Your vibrations become one, and one without the other just collapses the wave. So on that nice depress, how did you get me all depressing like that at the end, boys? What you done to me? Dog. So sending a lot of love out to Dog the Bounty Hunter. And we'll be back tomorrow night, or at least I will. I don't know about the guys, but I'll be here. Same time, same place on tfrlive.com. A lot more woo and news to get into. We'll have some fun along the way. Stay tuned for Lucky and Dr. Brooks Agnew coming up right after the break, right here on tfrlive.com. And wherever you are, make it TFR. And as Whistles would say, Denny, touch that dial. I was waiting for Joe to be smart there with one of his... It sounds like somebody from Bombay, Joe, usually when you say it.
Touch that dial.
Yeah, didn't he touch the dial? Right now, folks, that's us out of time. I'll be back tomorrow for the Safe Space stream during the day. That's 5 p.m. in the afternoon. That's noon on the East Coast and 9 a.m. over there on the West Coast on Crazy California. So once you kick the kids out to school, you can chill with Kev, the bounty hunter.
Kev the
And
bounty.
Kev, sometime this week, I may decide to wake up a little early and I might join you on one of your.
Dude.
You might do in a different door, and it is going to be a fun time.
Oh, Scotty boy, you are welcome any day. You can sit with us in the safe space, the most non-safe space on the internet,
Yes,
may I add.
I haven't had a chance to go into the closet that is known as a Kev safe space and play around with the Play-Doh and colors.
You know, I'm not just saying this, but even the chat say it's like the coolest chat when it comes to live streaming. It's just a bunch of people staying safe, away from the insanity. And it's like we're in a glass safe space, Scott, because we look out around the world at the madness. What's that, Joe?
Is that why Google's recruiting you?
Google are not recruiting me. I want to give a big shout out to everyone at YouTube and Google. And yes, it's okay, Joe. I told everyone today that I'm going to be having a liaison soon with the mothership. Yes.
Yeah.
Handlers sent from the mothership.
I don't have handlers. Nothing like that. Listen, I would be foolish not to take Google up on their offer to sit down and have a chat with somebody human. Okay, about like growing the channel memberships. And Joe, look at the faces on them, folks. Look at it. Dang, boys, you're so suspicious. You really, really are. So until tomorrow, and look at Scott, man. Don't do this to me. Look at the position you're putting me in here. Look at Joe. He's almost about to wash his hands of me forever. Terrible.
Kev's gonna be on the new cologne commercial for his name brand cologne called Chill.
No, come on. Shield the toilet.
A musk.
Has it got a
It'll be
musky
It'll
aroma?
be one of those weird abstract cologne commercials, and you'll see Kev standing there, kind of looking off into the distance. It'll be like a, mono black and white thing, and then
Boys. What can I do?
staring at the Google logo, and he's like, "What does it all mean?"
You know, the last thing I should be doing when I go into that meeting is saying, "Hey guys."
That's a lot of zeros. Woo.
What's a lot of zeros?
A Google.
Right, folks, we're out here. Yes, a big thank you to Kelly Catholic. All right, I like that name. We've got Mannerus, Teresa, Queen Goddess, Polynation, John Nelson, Joanne Williams, Persona. We've got loads more in there. That Roxy, Brian, Sidvich, Marty, another member. Oh, they're all in there. King Sweet, Armand, Running Turtle, Queen Goddess. Did I have that one? Holly Noel. Dang, there's so many people. Jason Merritt.
Good stuff tonight.
Yep, Philip Johnson. And tomorrow, folks, we've got Warren there. I could keep going. We're out of time. I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm going to play the music. Joe's going to put on his funny doll face for everyone to laugh at. And I'll be back for the live stream tomorrow. So until then, keep it real and keep your mind open, but not to the point where your brain falls out. So, Joe, come on, give us your face, man. $5, you can get Joe like that. He love you long time, does Mr. Joe. Look at him. Look at him.